Good morning. This video is about every media source being a kung fu master when it comes to destroying strawmans. And it's a perpetual downward spiral, because if one side begins to knock on the other side's worst examples, worst incidents, take quotes from things that are misunderstood or which are just plain bad, the other side will take up the heat sort of and give back. And what we get is a very strawman hitting media, both from the mainstream and from the alternative media. And today it's almost hard to distinguish between those two if you're taking part of those two, because you know that both are very biased. Now the difference is that so far, and still, but not for a long time to come, the mainstream media has the upper hand because they are their public, and their approach is not so obvious that they are hitting the strawmen. And strawmen, I mean the worst argument from the other side, which is, you can take it apart easily. You can always find an incident of someone being, there's always a scumbag in every group, in every ideology, in every idea, in every movement. And so what we get is a sort of strawman strawman infotainment, basically. And we can't demand, I mean, there's no possibility to have a perfect media, because in that case it would be a slow process of sort of like in academia, where everybody's writing papers and having their quotes correct. Those quotes need to be watertight, and they publish their papers, and then they, that would just be silly, because there's a middle ground there. And the more things that are happening in the world, the more strawman infotainment the media becomes, because there's so many news that have to happen, that are happening, that you can't, it comes in here and goes out there. That's why sometimes when you think about something that happened recently, for example, I'm still very much how do you say, not concerned but caring, but amazed about the plane that was shut down over Ukraine, and incidents as such that just disappear like in Sweden, for example, there's so much criminality right now that there is no time for the collective sort of mind of people to go out and manifest, light candlelights, because everything goes so fast and there is so much garbage going on. And another thing I see also, for example, on Twitter, that I use because I think it's a good way to sort of just to illustrate, when the Paris tragedy, no, not Paris, sorry, where was it? Lyon. Yeah, the truck incident where the madman, the Islamist, ran over people. For example, the news got faster out on Twitter than in mainstream Swedish media. On that incident, I compared those two, and I compared the papers and all that, and I just came to the conclusion this is insane, because, and you can still see that. I don't own a television. I haven't so in 10 years, and I don't, over 10 years now. Yeah, time goes by, and I don't pay the public service. But when I'm visiting people, and if I have access, like now when we are renting a house, you can sort of analyze it and look how it is. So anyway, things are happening at such a pace that there is no way to sort of have a deeper discussion, and it's not going to be possible. So this sort of strawman media mud is not going away, And I wanted to make this video because one of the news sources in the sort of alt-right media that I follow various media sources. I don't personally care too much about their ideology. Some you know, it's all about the information given, and you have to be critical of the sources. I mean, is this a source to an actual event, an actual paper? Is this a interpretation of an actual event, or is this just a link to some quasi news sites that just, you know, drops numbers and and statistics? But anyway, and I thought that they took a very strong position in the way that they sort of really kung fu Shaolin style the straw man thing, and I understand that, you know, that gives, but it becomes so pitiful. Do you say pitiful? Yeah, because when this is done often, for example, in the, maybe there's still a wave of, you know, complaining about feminism and gender stuff and all that crazy feminazi thing. I mean, in the end, I wonder this, because which are worse, the actual, you know, feminazis that go out there and, you know, just are obnoxious, or the whining men who seem to, like, who don't understand that's just a barking dog. It's a phenomenon, you know. It's like noise, and, you know, okay, this is noise, this is bad, and you go on. So, because it feeds each other. I mean, you know, that noise feeds the reaction from the other side, and, you know, that goes on. And the result is a fight of, it's a strawman army versus a strawman army, and every strawman is a Shaolin master. Now, what's the solution to this? There is none. You can be aware of it. But you see, most news sites on the internet, everything is based on traffic and surviving economically. This is something people don't realize who don't work with the web, and something that I didn't realize before I began on the career I have right now. But anyway, it is that basically every news sites, you know, mainstream news, they are all just a bus station for traffic that generates profit, and that becomes even more important for the mainstream media because people are buying. I haven't seen a newspaper in someone's home for a while, but they're not buying the old style dinosaur media, so that becomes more crucial. That's why I have news sites detecting an ad blocker, and, you know, either asking you to sort of whitelist a page, or simply, like, you know, you can't read this, because they need money, and the more money the news need, the more commercial it gets. Now, that is also something to be aware of. How does a news media source earn its money? There are some who are totally commercial free, which are based on subscriptions or donations. One example is Red Ice Radio from Sweden, which is driven by Henrik Palmgren. Now, you don't have to agree with them or, you know, be a super fan, but they have done a great job of sort of really not selling you any superpower vitality pills or something like that. Hint, hint. But anyway, so everything is basically on the net is about keeping the flow going, keeping the traffic, keeping the interest. And this is the thing. When we have the most sort of interesting things going on, which are basically strawman armies throwing rocks at each other, that is when you have the least thing going on, really, because that is in the vacuum of actual, real, solid insightful things, you can always fall back on the straw man. Look at from that campaign, or look from that group. Look, they said like they said this, and it's always a situation of a minority. Like, and if you pay attention, in some cases, for example, these are seeked out, so they actually go to the other side, and they find these bad examples, and they sort of come on, like throw it, and they get something thrown at them, verbally or sometimes physically, and then it becomes like, oh, look at this, they are like this, and yeah, what you have is basically sensationalism, and alternative media has embraced that, because otherwise it wouldn't keep pace during times that are not so eventful. And these are things I keep in mind, and I find that you don't have there is no good media source, really. I mean, even if you and me had a media source, we would be biased. So it takes a lot of dignity to accept that, that to realize, okay, this is the straw man stuff, but there are the good arguments. Those are the ones who need to be confronted, and this is up to each and every one of us. One anecdote for this actually is, which is going sort of off topic but still remaining, is to get into the classics of philosophy, especially political philosophy, sort of, and also mind philosophy. Now, as this flow of information and straw man armies fighting each other, we have a sense that we need to sort of keep up with that. You want to see what WikiLeaks releases. You want to go plow through the latest information, to give you an example. But it is very important, and to sort of go back to some basic elementary elements of, like, Plato's Republic, Niccolo Machiavelli, the Prince, and classical works. Now, one approach to this, which I find is very helpful for keeping it up and actually finding time, is those books are cheap because they are in the public domain, and you can buy them cheaply, but it takes time to sit and read, and to be honest, it is easy to pick up the computer and go back to following in the something that goes on in the latest events. So there is a site that's called the LibriVox, if you haven't heard of it, and it is basically an open source platform where people read books and just upload that. Now, the quality can vary, but there are some good readers, there are some older public domain recordings, there are some people who are really good at it and have a pleasant enough voice for you to get used to. So in that way you can actually get connected to the sort of elementary scheme behind the ongoing events, and understand things coming from the deepness, to the surface, which I think is a very good thing for oneself, and as an inspiration towards others, and also in light of discussing matters with other people. Now, as this site has audiobooks, it is very easy to plow through a book through maybe a month, because there is no time schedule for things. Like in school, it was very, very shallow philosophy of thought, politics, and even in university philosophical studies, my experience is that it is also, you have to get that on that date, you have to have those quotes, and often you have to, the assignments and whatever you do, it has to be from a certain perspective. There is not enough time for actually like dwelling in a classical work and this has helped me at least to have this audio source over at LibriVox, and maybe have the book nearby, have a copy because they are cheap, and in that way you can sort of get fascinated by how things have changed throughout 2000 years, but they have stayed the same. So that is maybe one anecdote, antidote, sorry, antidote towards stopping this sort of strawman martial arts that's going on, and just like taking a break, going back to the roots. And this is an easy way to get into classical philosophical books, just by listening and doing something else, or listening actively, half passively. It still goes down into your head, and you still ponder about it, and it shares you insight, and also gives you this sort of calmed down version of what is going on, compared to getting to your laptop and throwing yourself into the latest news. At least it did for me. And so that's that on this morning. It's a sunny day. It's been raining for 5 days maybe, and it's been cloudy, so today's a clear day, and we're gonna head out to shorter road trip. So take care and all the best. Ciao.